3,000 years ago, in what is modern-day Lebanon, lived one of the most sophisticated people of the ancient world, the Phoenicians. At its height, the Phoenician Empire rivaled the great civilizations of ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome. But is there a dark side to this enigmatic people? Many archaeologists and historians believe they also sacrificed their own children in horrifying religious rituals.
We have this massive, very dramatic rite taking place in the dark, involving the cutting of the throat and bloodletting, accompanied by musicians.
The Phoenicians had a sacrificer, someone who was especially adept with the knife and could slit the throats very effectively.
A blood sacrifice on the altar, accompanied by the actual cremation
on a funeral pyre.
Hi, Kevin. Welcome back to the program.
Hi, Sarah.
You have some updates on what we talked about as far as what's going on with the Vatican and Pope Francis being stripped of power. Can you please tell us what you know? But before you get into what you know, can you please tell us what your source of this information is?
Well, there's two sources. One is someone right inside the Curia, which is the College of Cardinals. That's the governing body in Rome. Another is a reporter in Rome who has his own sources in Inside Track. So we can't give names, of course.
Well, sure, it's protected sources, so that makes a lot of sense. How I just wanted to make sure that people understood that these are not just rumors or whatever, and that we are vetting something, because this is very serious. This is a big deal. It's one of the most powerful people in the world, at least in the minds of an average, person out there. And so we want to make sure that people understand that at least the sources we have been vetted.
That's right. Also, you have to remember that, he's a very anomalous figure, Jorge Bergoglio, this so-called Pope Francis, because, we can get into that, but it's really being questioned whether he's ever actually held power. And I think this is being revealed on what's happened.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so now you were going to say that our last show really made a difference as far as getting out there and helping this move forward. Can you talk about that too as you explain the story?
Well, in a nutshell, the exposure that your story gave, it hit some of the alternative media in Europe, and it actually triggered one of our sources to come forward with this revelation. So we can attribute this directly to the last interview we did.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so what is it that you're learning?
Well, it was an announcement that came from this source, and it was confirmed by the reporter, that yesterday, Bergoglio, Pope Francis, was actually removed from any position of authority within the Curia by three cardinals, who are now basically the power that are running the Vatican. That's the Cardinal Secretary of State, Pietro Parolin, Mark Ouellet, who's a Canadian cardinal, and Gerhard Müller, who's a German. And in a nutshell, Müller is connected to the Vatican Bank. Mark Ouellet runs all the bishops through his chairmanship of the Congregation of Bishops. And Pietro Parolin is the political power. He's the Secretary of State. And the reason this happened in a nutshell was that Jorge Bergoglio's connection with Maxime Zoriega, who's the Queen of the Netherlands, and she's Argentine like he is, it's about to blow open because they had an affair for a number of years in Argentina. They probably had a child, and
wow.
We have evidence that this child was ritually sacrificed. Now, this, of course, is a standard procedure in the Ninth Circle satanic cult, that you have to sacrifice your firstborn. That's how you rise up through the hierarchy of this Ninth Circle. We, in fact, believe that Maxime Zoriega and he had that relationship. Now, the Ninth Circle, who really run a lot of the Vatican, they're very concerned about this coming out for obvious reasons. So they need to force Bergoglio out of office, out of any position of authority before this weekend, which is a major conclave of the Ninth Circle in the Vatican, in Rome rather, very near the Vatican. And I sent you an image. We can actually look at it exactly where this thing is going to take place. It's a church called San Lorenzo Pacibus Church. It's literally a block away from Rome, and it's only 100 yards from where I conducted that first exorcism, which is interesting, in 2009. That really kind of opened up a lot of this stuff. So that's kind of in a nutshell what's happened, but there's a lot more to it.
But why is this ritual so important?
Well, first of all, this is a weekend where it always happens. It's the old Roman ritual called Terminalia, and that's when children and animals were sacrificed ritually in ancient Rome for the crops at this time of year. As it's a long thousands of year old tradition, and child sacrifice has been part of that long tradition, and it's gone on every February 23rd. We reported a few years ago of that happening at the same spot in the San Lorenzo Church. This one, this time is very important because there's a transition of power happening. Bergoglio is being forced out of any position of authority, and this triumvirate of three cardinals has taken over. Now, don't forget, it doesn't mean he'll disappear. They're going to keep him as a public figurehead.
How long? Because last time you were thinking that they would make him sick, or there would be something where he would say he was sick and then he'd step down and maybe within a year he'd be gone.
Depending on what happens and if he talks and if he doesn't play ball, he might die of a sudden illness, sudden heart attack. You never know. It's the old Roman practice of killing off inconvenient people, right? But what's interesting is that it's questionable whether Bergoglio was ever actually being Pope. First of all, as a Jesuit, he wasn't allowed to become a Pope. There's a rule within the Jesuits saying you cannot become a cardinal or a pope, and yet there he is both. It's kind of like the provision in England where no monarch of the English throne can be a Roman Catholic. The Jesuits in the Vatican have been fighting for centuries, jockeying for power, and so they don't want a Jesuit, and yet there he is, appointed in one day as Pope after Ratzinger is forced out because of our exposure of his role in covering all that up, child trafficking up. And he's never lived in the Vatican. He's never worn the papal ring. Whenever he makes a pronouncement, the cardinals tend to discount what he says. So he's not acting, there's this myth about Bergoglio that he's a pope of the poor. He wanders around Rome handing out clothes to people. There's no way that if he was actually Pope, they would ever let him do that, just from a security point of view. So the whole thing has been like a big hand puppet display to get everyone to believe that the Vatican is all different now. He's even named after St. Francis, right? So it's a big PR campaign, but now he's become too much of a liability. So, that's it for him.
Why would he play ball? Why would he allow them to do this, strip him from the power, and then play ball for years?
Because they've got him blackmailed. They know about his relationship, not only with Maxime Zuriega, who's now the Queen of the Netherlands, and we should explore that a little bit. That's very interesting. But his own history in Argentina, where in 3 years he went from becoming a priest to the head of the Jesuits in Argentina, the Superior General, conveniently a year before the military coup happened. And he then became an advisor to the military junta. They murdered 30,000 Argentine people, and he helped traffic the children of their political prisoners. He was in like a dirty sock there helping the junta. So he's got all that dirty laundry background. He's faced lawsuits from his priests in Argentina who accused him of colluding with the military. He's got all of his dirty laundry there, and they know it, he knows it, and that's how you can control somebody, right?
Well, would the average person ever learn the truth on this if we don't get leaks from the inside? I mean, could they keep this secret until he dies?
Oh yeah, because don't forget, 99% of people don't want to believe this, and they will not believe it. They just can't believe, they're so conditioned to believe that people in authority, especially in a church, are somehow morally superior to everybody else and are incapable of doing crime. People just won't be able to accept this, but this is coming from eyewitnesses, people on the ground, and it's being documented. It's a well-known fact. I remember the first time I went to Rome, as I think I mentioned last time, an Italian senator said to me, the mafia and the church and the government, they're all the same people. They'll just care about their money. That's their only priority. And that's why they can't have a controversial person at the helm like Bergoglio, because he could bring them all down.
Yeah. Okay. So now how could an average person who's watching this do some research to learn about this? Where would you say they could start to say, yeah, this really is what's going on?
Well, you can't rely really on most of what's on the internet. A lot of it's speculation in the alternative media. That's not based on eyewitnesses. But you could write to us. We do have sources. Of course, most of these sources don't want to come out publicly, but the proof is always in what we do. Like when we held our first tribunal, the common law court that convicted Ratzinger, not only Ratzinger, but 3 cardinals all stepped down, all of them named in the indictment. So the proof is in what we do, and the result in the real world, not just idle talk.
Okay, so basically they can just pay attention to who's stepping down. Now, the reporter that is one of your sources, do they report on things like this, or is it just too controversial for them to even discuss?
They try doing it, but they can't because their editors are always influenced not to run these stories. So it has to circulate through the alternative media, but they are often very controlled and shut down as well. Like you might have noticed that our website has been down for 2 months, itccs.org. We can't get it back up. No matter who we try, they get sabotaged. So there's a real concerted attempt now to shut down all independent sources of information. But I'll give you an example of how, nevertheless, things happen. This church where this sacrificial ritual is going to take place Saturday at midnight, the San Lorenzo Church, it's not, when you look at its history, it's run by a cardinal. There's these things called titular churches in the Catholic Church, and they're under the authority of a cardinal. Well, the cardinal that runs that church is directly tied to this Gerhard Mueller, who's now one of the 3 guys running the power in the Vatican. And they're all connected to the Ninth Circle. They've all been named as people who preside at these Ninth Circle rituals. And so it's all you have to do is kind of follow the key people, and you keep coming across all this stuff, right?
And the Ninth Circle is something that people can learn about. They can now that has been documented and discussed, and there's pretty good information out there on the Ninth Circle.
Well, there has been in the last few years as insiders have come forward. There's 2 eyewitnesses, Anne-Marie van Bienberg and Toos Nienhaus, who come forward. They were raised within the Ninth Circle. It's an intergenerational satanic cult, and they were raised as children, to take part in these ceremonies and everything. Do you have that image I sent you? I wanted to show folks part of what I'm talking about. Is it possible to project that?
Well, can you talk about it, and then I'll just paste it in.
Well, when you put it up, you'll notice off to the left, there's a big circle, and that's St. Peter's Square. And just to the right is like a parking lot. And just south of that is it says Chiesa, that's church in Italian. San Lorenzo in Piscopo, that's a little church. That's where the Ninth Circle ritual takes place in a sub-basement crypt right there. Well, if you look to the left in St. Peter's Square, you'll notice there's this obelisk right in the middle. And that obelisk was set up by the Emperor Caligula. Now, he was a depraved, even by Roman emperor standards, he was very depraved. He was cannibalistic. He drank human blood. The historian Tacitus describes that. Him taking part in these cannibalistic rituals, exactly the same rituals that go on at the Ninth Circle ceremonies. And that you notice the obelisk is lined up along this line. That's where the Roman the columns there were from the Roman Colosseum. And that line running from the obelisk right down the street next to this church is the very site where the first Christians were ritually sacrificed and killed by the Roman state in the year 65. Now, in other words, that circle and that obelisk represents a concentration of demonic energy based on human suffering, sacrifice, blood. So it's a PowerPoint directing that human suffering energy, which is exactly what you do in a satanic ritual. And in fact, in the Catholic Mass, which says that drinking the blood of the innocent gives you eternal life. That's exactly what the Satanist believes as well. So that site is very important to look at because it's one of the centers of this kind of Ninth Circle network we're talking about.
It's just crazy. It's over the top. I've been hearing this stuff from a lot of people, that there's a whole another side to all this stuff. And it's very disturbing to hear this, to say the least. So what do you suggest to the average person that's listening to this, how they can take something out of this and be constructive?
Well, first of all, there's a better response happening this time, so people can take heart that the world is beginning to wake up. For example, part of our posting, the news notice that went out that you got, describes how In response to this Ninth Circle ritual that's happening this weekend, the Spanish government has sent a diplomatic note of concern to one of these guys who's now running the Vatican, the Secretary of State, Pietro Parolin. And it says that, they're concerned, they're asking Interpol and the Italian police to investigate this church. And we've also dispatched, the ITCCS in Europe has dispatched people to try to disrupt the ceremony, like we've done in a number of other places. And one of the guys running the Vatican now, this Canadian Cardinal Marc Ouellette, he presided at a Ninth Circle ritual in Montreal at the Marie Rendemont Cathedral that we also stopped. So there are people converging on the spot to try to save these children's lives Saturday night.
And the Spanish authorities.
The Spanish government, and they're the ones who objected. They're the ones who helped cause Ratzinger to step down after they looked at our evidence and sent a note saying Ratzinger could face arrest if he ever comes to Spain. Then he resigns 5 days later. So in other words, we've shown that people can have an effect. The tide is beginning to turn. And so what you need to do is a number of things. Tell every Catholic you know to stop giving money because they're colluding in a criminal conspiracy. Do not put money in that collection plate. Don't even attend. You can do, worship in your home or whatever. And we're campaigning as well, starting in April, what they call Holy Week, April 14th to 21st. That's Easter week, and Good Friday, and then Easter on the 21st of April. There's a whole new campaign to get people to pressure the governments to cut off financial support, tax-exempt status to these criminal churches, especially the Roman Catholic Church. There'll be protests, teach-ins, all sorts of activities in Western Europe and North America about all of this stuff.
Well, so the church, people give money to the church, and how much of it ends up going back to the Vatican versus staying in their community to help people?
We figure in the Protestant churches, something like 3/4 of it goes to the national church body. In the Catholic Church, about 90% of it goes to the Vatican. And
that's terrible. It should stay locally to help people.
It's used primarily to, and there's this whole show we could do on the financial ties of the Vatican Bank to the 10 major banks in the world. Basically, the Vatican Bank is used as a money laundering system, not only by the mafia, but by all the top banks in the world.
I've had that confirmed by detectives.
Yeah, Deutsche Bank, B of A Corporation, Goldman Sachs, Lehman Brothers, Merrill Lynch, Barclays. They all use this, offshore accounts and then launder through the Vatican Bank. So that's where people's money is going to fund these criminal bodies, heavily invested in the arms industry, in, genetic engineering, like all of these corporations, they're heavily invested. The biggest landmine company in the world, owned by the Vatican Bank, that's where people's money's going.
She would not only drain this blood to drink, but she would drain the blood and bathe in it and cover herself in it and luxuriate in a bath of warm blood.
Cannibalism was widespread in early modern Europe. Lecturer Louise Noble, historian Dr. Richard Sugg, and anthropologist Beth Conklin have all researched how Europeans in both the Old and New Worlds ate human remains for medicinal purposes. Known as corpse medicine, it was popular amongst British royalty, Queen Elizabeth's predecessors. William III and Queen Mary both took potions containing human skull. Charles II liked it so much he bought the recipe and mixed his own. These remedies were made using grinded Egyptian mummies, body parts supplied by an illegal grave-robbing industry, and blood freshly drank from executed criminals. Even Charles I's blood was mopped up by the crowd when he was beheaded, because his royal spirit was considered to have potent healing powers.
So for the folks out there that are listening to the show, Jesuits 101, how do we explain to them who they are? Where do we start?
The Jesuits have been in power under Vatican. They're essentially the military arm of the Vatican. They have their military arm of the Jesuits is called the Knights of Malta. You may have heard of the Maltese Cross. Christopher Columbus on his ships had the Maltese Cross, the red shield. Red shield is related to the Rothschilds, which means red shield. And they were founded under the Vatican to establish basically rule over all dominion over all what they call heretics and Christians. And because they're the divine right of God, they have the right, and they put it into Roman Latin law, which we're still under today, Also, our currency is under Roman currency as well, maritime law. And so it's all tied back to the Vatican, which is part of the trilateral. You may have heard of the Trilateral Commission. Well, they refer to the three city-states of Washington, D.C., the City of London, and the Vatican. And each of these city-states are beholden to no country, have their own mayor, their own police force, actually their own constitution, which we can get into a little bit later. And they've just decided that because Roman Catholicism has to be the overarching power that is the representative of God, and since they're the representative, they get to make the rules, that they hold dominion of all souls and all land. And they passed some laws back in the 13 and 1400s, what we can get into under trusts, and that's how our Roman Latin law system got established that we're still using today. Yeah, and their rulership is the church to rule worldwide, the Pope to rule the church state, and the Jesuits to rule the Pope. That's under their command and control. Vicar, which is the representative, the Pope Vicar, representative of God, comes from the word vicarious. So the vicarious Christ literally means the Antichrist. So what we're dealing with here is a false religion, a pseudo-religion masked to hide the satanic, evil, Luciferian principles. They're all-seeing eye. Osiris is not just an occult symbolism. They're watching over everybody. They have a pope called the Black Pope, which is about 6 levels above the white pope. The current Black Pope is Adolfo Nicholas. The superior general, this is from their documents, the superior general hears all, sees all, does all, yet in appearance does nothing. The eye of the general surveys the world to its farthest bounds. There is nothing done which he does not see by 1,000 eyes, hear by 1,000 ears, and when has a behest to execute, he can select the fittest agent for an innumerable host, all of whom are ready to do his bidding. So we see a Jesuit order, Catholic clergy, operating as a papal and royal military. It's very subversive. There's about 13,500 priest members who have taken the fourth vow, and I don't have that up right now, but we should read that fourth vow. And the vow is disgusting to read in its entirety, and to read what they're committed to is total allegiance to the Pope. So the allegiance to the Pope came about in the Protestant Reformation because the Pope said, "My word is God," where the Protestants said, "Well, the Scriptures, we can read the Scriptures for ourselves, and you're not God." So that's when they broke away, and they had the Protestant Reformation, and then they had to be reeled back in, and it involved the kings and played out with Spain, who's very high-powered with the Jesuits. And the Jesuits are geographically organized by 91 provinces, of which those 10 assistancies I read are around the world. The Military Order of Malta, which is the Maltese Cross, has about 12,500 members, and their secret society, Opus Dei, has about 26,000 celibate members, and it's headed by the Society General. So it's a military operation. They call them generals. And he has 4 assistants to provide care through the assistancies. They have secret instructions. There was a moneta secreta, which was found, which was the secret instructions for the Jesuits, and it told how they go about doing all their bad deeds around the world in secret and not being seen. They are the masters of deception. It's really, after all the research I'd done and just a couple years ago start to get learned on them, it was a real eye-opening to see who was behind the power really running the show. And then they celebrate it in movies like Men in Black and V for Vendetta. They had the gunpowder plot with Guy Fawkes that's celebrated in the V for Vendetta. That was a Jesuit operation to get Princess Elizabeth to the throne. It had nothing to do with abolishing Parliament, but that's the story we learned.
And Pope Francis, the Pope that is out front, the veneer for the rest of the world, is a Jesuit also, correct?
First ever.
Yeah, and when you get into it, I mean, it's also the first pope that has stepped down. Ratzinger stepped down, and it was told it was because of all the child pedophilia. So in comes the first ever Jesuit pope who ruled over the dirty wars. He was Archbishop of Argentina during the dirty wars down there in the 80s. And so here we have just really bad people and their history of being bad, and in between, they're being made up to be these great, wonderful, helping the poor type of people. And it just makes me ill when I see Pope Francis going around the country or the world saying we got to help the poor, while the Vatican has more wealth than all of us put together. They could sell just a few of their underground vaults and all debt in the world would be cleared. It's just really bad the way they hide everything.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is staggering. It really is.
Yeah, and bringing it, Mike, to current, I mean, we find that the Obama team, the Catholic Kitchen Cabinet, as they're called, it includes Senator Bob Casey, Governor Tim Kaine, Representative Patrick Murphy, Senator Ted and his wife Victoria Kennedy, Senator Richard Durbin, Senator John Kerry, Patrick Leahy, Mike Capiano, Representative Lacey Clay. They're all Catholic, Roman Catholic school trained. The Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, went to St. Mary's. Robert Codillo, the Director of Intelligence, schooled at Georgetown. Deputy National Security Advisor Tom Dolan, Catholic University of America. Biden, connected to the Biden family. Robert Snyder, Director of Intelligence Program. John Brennan, Assistant President for Homeland Security. Dennis McDonough is the Chief of Staff for Obama. Communications Director Dan Pfeiffer, speechwriter John Favreau. They all went to Jesuit Roman Catholic schools. Obama's community organizing in the 80s, John Kelman, he was a Catholic minister. John Gregory Caluzzo was his advisor as a Jesuit priest. Reagan administration also had their fill of CIA Director and Knight of Malta George Tenet, CIA Director Skull and Bonesman Porter Goss, Joe Biden, Catholics. Donald Rumsfeld didn't finish, but he went to Georgetown University. John Brennan trained at Jesuit Fordham University, CIA Director 2003. Gordon Liddy of Nixon FBI, he went to Fordham. Trump went to Fordham. Hillary and Bill Clinton went to Georgetown University. Senator Alexander Haig went to Secretary of State, went to Georgetown. Robert Gates, Secretary of Defense, PhD from Georgetown. Former Chief of Operations for Blackwater in Iraq, Joseph Schmitz, Knights of Malta, Opus Dei. John C. Gannon and Robert Beardsworth were crucial in the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, were both Jesuit trained. Caspar Weinberger, former Secretary of Defense, Knights Grand Cross of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. I don't have the school he went to, but it was a Catholic school. Going to Georgetown, we had King Abdullah of Jordan, former National Security Advisor General James Jones. Fidel Castro attended 3 Jesuit institutions. He comes from old royal blood family from Spanish lines. Santa Clara University, the Jesuit School of Technology out in California, they graduated Leon Panetta, CIA for Obama. Janet Napolitano, who used to be the head of DH, Department of Homeland Security, is now the head of head regent at the University of California school system. She went to Santa Clara. Jerry Brown, the governor of California, Jesuit, went to Santa Clara. His dad, Pat Brown, was a member of Opus Dei, who was governor of California before that. Gavin Newsom, the mayor of San Francisco, Santa Clara University. Ron Paul was associated with John McManus, the president of Holy Cross. 6 out of 9 Supreme Court justices are religious Roman Catholics. Antonio Sciala, who just got knocked off recently, Xavier High School, Georgetown University. John Roberts, Sam Oliotto, General Peter Pace, Michael Peter Jackson, Alberto Gonzalez. These are all names that you may have heard of. General
Anthony Kennedy too, right?
Yep. Well,
Justice
Kennedy
Anthony
broke away from them, and that's why they took him out. Peter Pace, David Pietrus, the general who had the sex scandal lodged against him. Baron Conrad Hilton, Nicholas Brady, General Alexander Haig, Pat Buchanan, Alan and Avery Dulles, the CIA and Secretary of State for the United States back after World War II. John McCone, Joseph and Ted Kennedy, but not John Kennedy. Lee Iacocca, Edward Hoover, Heinrich Himmler, the right-hand man to Hitler. Bowie Kuhn, sports owner. Clay Shaw, who was allegedly the killer helped with the JFK assassination. Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr. were Knights of Malta members. Tip O'Neill, Henry Luce of Time Magazine, William Casey, CIA. Henry Luce's wife, Dame Claire Booth Luce. Prescott Bush was a member. Frank Captor, the director of movies. Jeb Bush is a 4th-degree Knights of Columbus. Shriners, who are also affiliated, John Wade, Gerald Ford, and Dwight D. Eisenhower. I mean, this list, I've got 20, 30 more names on here. They're all affiliated to the Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, all of these secret organizations that are all admittedly ruled from the Vatican and the Society of Jesus. And there's just too many names for this to be a coincidence.
Now, Jamie, you mentioned a couple of schools, so are we to assume that there are certain schools that if these elites have graduated or have gone to these schools, that it's a pretty good indicator that they're involved in the Jesuit order or the Knights of Malta? You mentioned Georgetown University and Fordham University. Are there others?
There's, I don't have a list in front of me, but there's I think 25 Roman Catholic universities around the country, but Fordham is located in New York City. New York's called the Empire State. Georgetown was founded 1 year before Washington, D.C. in 1870 by a guy named John Carroll. John Carroll was the richest man in the United States at the time. He was a Jesuit trained at schools over in England. He donated the land to form Washington, D.C. Why was it named the District of Columbia? And what is it a district of? It's like a district attorney is part of a bigger district. Third question is, what was the name of the city before it was Washington, D.C.? Rome, Maryland.
Rome, Maryland. Okay.
It had 7 hills and a Capitoline Hill, okay, just like in Rome. Then when they brought out the Independence Day, the Declaration, the independence from Britain, the War of Independence in 1812, we're going to hang together, hang separately. First thing they did to design their flag, they went to Betsy Ross, which is another false story. And Betsy said to John Adams and Thomas Jefferson and George, well, what colors do you want our new country? What color flag? Because flags are really important, the symbol of our country. They looked across the pond. They said, hey, those British got really cool colors. Why don't we use the same colors as them and just leave out the cross? I mean, it's just, you get back to the history of our founding of our country. No one knows why the federal government was created in 1871 with the Organic Act. Nobody knows that the United States of America, in capital letters, is a corporation that was founded in that year and donated by the Jesuits. With the year before, they established Georgetown for command and control.
Yeah.
We are the New Jerusalem. And what they set up in the New Jerusalem was the new experiment. And the one thing, Mike, about the Jesuits I've learned is they are very, very patient, and they are very long-term planners. They have a long, long line of just waiting till the right time to execute what they need to do, and then they will wait even longer to get revenge. They're very revengeful. So when they created this country, created the federal government, they changed the language from the United States of America to the United States for America.
Yep.
And since we're under Roman Latin law, you got to go to dictionaries and figure it all out. But basically what this did is put us under the corporation, where President Obama is the CEO of the corporation. And that's why we have secretaries and treasuries in the White House and in the Congress and in the Supreme Court. It's all part of the same corporation. So when we pay our money to the federal government, we are paying into a corporation. And so what they do, Mike, is they put us all on ships in the legalese sense of the word, because we're under Roman Latin law, as I said. And here's another one. What's the word Latin mean? Nobody knows what the word Latin means. Well, that goes back to Rome. It's part of the way they roll. And so when they created this all, they put us all on our ships, ownerships, partnerships, relationships, scholarships. And this is part of the maritime law, where they created these trusts back in the 13 and 1400s, these SQDs, or what's called testamentary trusts. And these 3 trusts basically said, well, since God owns and Jesus owns all the land and all the souls, we're going to create trusts to take care of them. And so the first trust was called an unum sanctum and said all souls are lost at sea. And this is under maritime law. The Vatican's called the Holy See. And so we're going to claim rights to them. The second trust, I forget the name of, Roman Pontifex. That was the establishment of all lands being owned by God. So we'll set up a trust for that. And then just like in a will, you have a pour-over will. They created the third trust as a pour-over will. And so they've claimed our whole existence and created these fictitious characters. So when you go into court on your citizenship and you enter your docket, or when you go into your river bank with your currency and make your deposit slips and then you account for it with your frozen assets and your liquid assets, it's all based on water.
Yeah.
It's all based on us being on our ships. And once we're in this fictitious world, when you get your bank statement back, it's in capital letters. When you get your Social Security card, it's in capital letters. When you see the United States of America in capital letters, we're all under this corporation. And so there's a big sovereign, people are waking up to this straw man, it's called. and they're actually breaking away and going into courts and saying, no, I'm not ruled by you, I'm not the name you say I am, and they're resigning from the corporations. When you get your driver's license, it's a privilege, you're under commerce law. All these things are designed to keep us enslaved and to not have, they refer to us as chattel in their legal definitions. They refer to us in their governments as human resources. This is what they think of us.
Right.
Soldiers, the word soldier, which many people don't know, the word soldier means sold to die. And Kissinger called them dogs, and that's why they have dog tags. I mean, nobody wants to hear this stuff. It's not pleasant to hear, but it needs to get out that we were formed under this corporation since 1871, and that's why nothing will ever change. Nothing will ever change until we get rid of this system that enslaves us all under this legalese system, which is copyrighted, and they've owned the system for a long, long time. But with this disclosures now, I think a lot more people are going to start seeing through the veil, and they're not going to be able to hide anymore.
Well, I've been talking about this for a very long time, Jamie, about the fact that we are being governed and administered to by admiralty law. And the problem is that trying to get people to understand why it's not a good thing is a very, very difficult job to undertake, because I think what happens is people don't know what the alternative really is. This apparatus that's in place, it masquerades as the organic republic with the organic constitution and so on. So the question I have, and you can answer it or Bruce can answer it, when somebody asks, okay, this is good information, so we're being ruled by a corporation, so what? What does it mean to me at the end of the day? How is my life going to be better if it's not ruled by a corporation? How do you respond to that?
It's interesting you say that, because that's the exact same stuff I get. Well, what does it matter?
Right.
What does it matter if they've lied to us for 500 years? What does it matter if we're under a corporation? Well, they've got us so under the thumb where all of our electricity, all of our water, all of our food come from them. Our banking system, our currency, everything comes that they've created that we are beholden to live. How are you going to live if the water doesn't show up tomorrow? How do kids, how are you going to live if your smartphone doesn't boot up in the morning? So you have to be into the system. You have to believe that someone is going to be taking care of you because they've created the nanny state, the blue and the red. Why do we have only two choices, Coke or Pepsi, paper or plastic, or blue or red elections? It's all theater just to keep us from thinking we have power, to taking away the power of our own authors, of our own authority. No longer do I want someone telling me, I own a ranch and I own nothing on the property, but if I don't pay property taxes, I grow my own food, I have my own energy, I have my own water, I'll go to jail.
Right.
So that means somebody else owns me. I don't want anyone else to own me. I am an independent human being. I am not under some legalese creation that I was born into through the birthing certificate that was created in 1933 from the bankruptcy laws with FDR that we never got out of, and the bankers created the birth certificate so that us chattel would be owned at birth, and we'd be a securitized number that's actually traded on the New York Stock Exchange as a debt servitude to the bankers from way back in 1933. So when they want to run up to the date like $20 trillion in debt today, where every person in this country owes over $180,000 of obligated debt that doesn't get forgiven, the more these guys run up the debt, the more our children are owned, the more their children's children are owned. So everyone should be absolutely just shocked that they've created this system, an ownership society of command and control, and that the laws that were made to enslave you.
So here's a pyramid. Well, it's supposed to be a pyramid in 3D, a real pyramid. How do the pharaohs show it if they want to show it in 2D? To show it on a piece of cloth or on a piece of paper? I'm going to show you this now. Well, there you go, a Templar's cross, as the Templars founded Switzerland in 1291. And like the Iron Cross, the Germans have it. Well, the Swiss financed the Germans, as we know, as I showed you in my film, as Hitler came here in 23. So they paid him, and he had to obey them, right? Even the Pope has it. So this is a fold-out pyramid. The pharaohs are ruling the whole world. Now it's ready to be sewn on a jacket or on a shield or at the Pope's clothing, right? The Templar's cross is pharaonic. Look at it, the bloke is even wearing the sign. He's wearing the sign of the devil, right under. He's one of the pharaohs, the priest of Amun. As if one is not enough, it's full of it here. There it is, I just showed it to you.